Hello, everyone. Hello. Happy Thursday. It has been a minute since I have gone live. I'm excited to be back, continuing the Thriving After interview series. And tonight we're going to be interviewing the amazing Michelle McKinney. We are going to be talking about thriving after divorce. Now, this can go with people that have been married, have experienced divorce, or with people that have not, because Michelle is going to be talking about a lot of other things as well. So I'm going to give a few minutes for everyone to join in. How are you guys doing this Thursday evening? Where are you coming from? I know it has been a while since I've been on, so it is great to be back, and I'm so excited to continue the Thriving After interview series with you guys. If you have not watched the other interviews, please go on to my YouTube. The link is in my bio, and I have interviewed many different people with different stories and women that have just thrived after going through hardship, which I think we can all learn from. So please go watch those, and I'm going to bring in Michelle in a second. Let me know how you guys are doing this evening. Hello. Where are you guys coming in from? All right, I see Michelle is on. Wow, that was fast, girl. Hello. Hi.
We
Hi,
ready.
Michelle.
Hey, it's
How
good to
are
see your
you?
face live. I get to see you like online, of course, but like
Mhm.
live talking to you is so good.
You too. I met you in person one time,
hmm
and what year was that? Like 3 years ago?
It was literally speaking of this topic tonight, that was a really disruptive day after I spoke that
Really?
nobody would have ever known ever.
No. Isn't
So,
that crazy though that we can pull like so much like power and strength when we're going through hard times, and we can
mhm,
still inspire people. Like it's not
mhm.
about perfection. It's nobody has it all together, and people can really, I feel like, relate more and feel that within you whenever you're speaking, when you're going through like a certain season and stuff. When
Yeah,
I heard you speak, Michelle, I mean, I ran up to you afterwards.
I
I was
love
like,
you.
I needed to talk to you. So I appreciate you being here with us this evening. This is very, very special.
It's special for me too. So thank you for inviting me, because I know there's a wealth of people that you can talk to. So I appreciate you inviting me on to share my story and just for us to have this incredible conversation.
Yeah, this is going to be great. So Michelle, why don't you start off by introducing yourself? What do you do? Who are you? And what are you going to be speaking to us about tonight?
Fantastic. So on the personal side of things, or no, let's say the professional side, and then we'll get to the personal, because that's where we'll spend a lot of our time tonight. So on the professional side of things, I work dual like a lot of people do. Sometimes people just don't admit that they do, but I do. I work dual in the corporate space. I've been an executive assistant in that body of work for about 20 something years. If you ask me, and I think I'm right, I would say for me, I kill it in that space. In that, if you looked at like the top 10% of people in the world who do it exceptionally well, I know that I'm in the top 10, if not the top 5%, in
Wow.
supporting executives to figure out how to get from where they are to where they need to be within the organization, right? All the administrative, logistical, all those things, strategic side. What I did was I took that space, and I felt like God was leading me to, what you do for senior executives throughout the tenure of your career, what I've gifted you to do. Let's take that and marry it with your passion of supporting women and help women where you're helping executives get from here to there. Use that to help women to get from there, specifically in unleashing their dreams. And so the name of the business is Dreams Unleashed. And so I help women to discover, define, and confidently live out their God-given dreams. And as I say often, confidently doesn't mean that you don't feel the fear. It means you feel the fear and you do it anyway, while you're still juggling all the other things that are kind of happening in your life, the various roles and the hats that you have on.
That sounds great, Michelle. So question, when you
Yes.
say what you do in the corporate world, is it like IO Psych?
Explain that to me. What is
Okay,
IOC?
my twin just started getting into that. So basically what you were explaining, like you help executives kind of tap into that emotional side and like their different talents that maybe others have not tapped into or they didn't realize was there, and you help them like take those gifts within them to help them get to the next level.
I love that.
like in
So
their job. Yeah. So
no,
it was my first time hearing about it with my twin.
no, I love that. That's my first time hearing that. And so no, the work that I do in the corporate space, it is specifically executive assistant work. But what I've done over the course of my 20 years is that what sets me apart, not that others don't do it, is that I really focus in on, yeah, I can schedule your meetings, I can do all the things, but let's get more strategic and intentional about where you want to be. And so it's handling the administrative side of things, but it's also on the strategic side. What relationships do you want to build? How is your balance happening at work and at home? And so wherever over the years that guys kind of sent me on an assignment with a specific executive, because I believe that they're all assignments, is that it's always been an executive that is working at a very high level, but needs support in balancing what's happening at work and what's happening at home. And of course, in corporate spaces, you can't hire a person that's going to help with that because it stays that. But where I offer is, wait a minute, let's figure out how to make this work so that you are successful publicly, but also personally, you're winning at home too. And so how does that even marry itself into the workplace? So it's straight administrative support, but I just do it with a different spin on it that kind of sets things apart a bit.
Now, when did you get into breaking into being a dream coach?
Yes. So the business is officially 7 years old now. So the business has been officially running for the last 7 years. But prior to that, I was inviting people to my house or inviting them to the Wegmans grocery store, you know, when it actually before it existed or whatever the other stores were. And it was like, hey, you know, I'm doing this thing for women, come and watch something, or let's do a book study or whatever. And so I was just naturally doing it in my everyday life. And so it spawned from that space of just naturally doing it and opening up my home to saying, wait a minute, I feel like God's leading me in this other path to really formulate it as a business that's very specifically niched.
Have you always felt called to that, or did that kind of get birthed out of something else?
That's a great question. Nobody has ever asked me that question before.
Really?
No, I've never gotten that question before. I don't know that I've always been called to that. I think this is what I think about, you know, whenever I'm working with people, specifically helping them to figure out what is their purpose, right? Because I don't think that figuring out your purpose is, I just do this one thing. I think it's a package of things that happen over the rest of your life, right?
Absolutely.
In my opinion, you know, the way that I coach clients is through 3 things. You think about a Venn diagram where all the circles kind of touch equally in one part, right, in a sweet spot. So you have your gifts. Those are the things that God has given you that you did nothing to earn them. They are a gift. You do them exceptionally well, but education will only enhance it and make it better. And then there's a problem. What is the problem that exists in the world that you're like, oh, me, please put me on that problem before I leave this earth. I want to solve that problem. Now, gifts, I don't think that those really change as much. I think that you are birthed with those things, and there are other things that will be added on throughout the trajectory of your life, right? But those natural things, I think you're birthed, I think they don't change. They can get enhanced and you can pick up other things. Problem, that will shift because it also is attached to passion, which is the third circle. And the thing about passion, that is what I ask, what is the thing that you would suffer for? What is the people group or cause that you would suffer for? Now, what I was passionate about 20 years ago is different than what I'm passionate about now because of your life experiences. And I don't know, you know, right now, this is still stayed in the space of being passionate about women, but the call hasn't changed in terms of helping people get from here to there by using those gifts. But as we experience life, I think that's where you see some shifting and changing as you get experience and things like that.
It evolves.
It evolves. Perfect word.
Yes. We just got some free coaching there, guys.
We love it. We love it.
We love it. All right, Michelle. So we're going to dive in this evening. So the topic is thriving after divorce. And I know that there are many different parts to this. So I know I had questions planned, but I really just want to give you the floor right now and just allow you to share with us what specifically do you want to talk to us about tonight? Like, I know it's not just thriving after divorce, but there's so many different parts to that. So what is on your heart this evening?
So I'm grateful for the questions that you gave me, right? Because it helped me to kind of organize my thoughts through, and just from a, you know, tapping in spiritually, inwardly as well, is what do I want to talk about? So it's pretty much along the lines of things that you've actually asked. I think we were right on par, right? I think part of it is for people that are contemplating, right? That's one thing. for people who are contemplating and aren't necessarily in the divorce process, because that's a big, huge decision that has some weighty pieces and trying to figure out, how do I know, right? So I think there's that part. I think it is going through it. And then there is post-divorce. And so if we break it up into those three areas, I think it'll cover the things that will be helpful to people. And again, as we said before, that this may not be just relative to divorce. Some of the things I'm going to share relative to life changes and shifts. And part of what I want to start off first, you know, as I said, thank you for even allowing me to this space. The thing that I would kind of say first, before we even jump into all of this, that's a disclaimer for me, is that this is my story. This is my journey. I'm not telling anybody that this is what you ought to do. Part of this process and having this very transparent conversation is to be able to share what I experienced and what I'm learning in the process. And one of the things I posted is that whole thing that, you know, I think has been on the internet for a while about choose your heart. And for me, that really is what it was, is that I had to choose whatever my heart was. And for many years, we were married for probably about 22, 23 years. So a long time, right? And I knew that I had gotten to a place where something had to shift. And let me show you, and this is not like a plug, like, you know, people say a shameless plug. It's not a shameless plug. It is the truth of one of the things that helped me to realize that something had to change. So one of the things that I do through Dreams Unleashed is called a vision playbook, right? And it was something that I created because people do vision boards all the time, but I feel like there's a disconnect with vision boards in that you get together in these parties and you put together, you know, pictures, and you look on your friend's picture and they're talking about, oh, I want to go vacation, or I want to go buy a home or whatever. It's like, oh, you know what? I want to do that. And I challenge that because there's the one thought of, is that what you really want for your life? Like really, really want. But then the other place that vision boards stop short is they don't really help you to figure out how to get from here to there, which goes back to that purpose space, right? And so part of what was going on during that time, I was in my second iteration of working on my vision playbook, which I created. I'm going to show it to you really quick, just context and visual, right? So what it looks like. This was the second iteration. It looks different now, but basically it's accordion style, and each panel represents a different role in your life, right? So for oh, this is God's daughter, this is mom, this is self-care. And for example, this is the one we're going to talk about. This was lover and partner, or wife at the time. This was wife. So I was doing this vision playbook for myself this particular year, and I cut out all the pictures. I had written out a vision statement, right? Which I actually kept it because it's been a good reminder for me. And when I look back on this vision statement that I had initially wrote, it was really about how to be an even better supportive partner for my husband, right? And it was all the things about what I wanted to do. And then I started to cut out the pictures, you know, like you would on a vision board, about what the representation was, or people might say the manifestation, right? And it had big words, love, and all those things, right? And when I looked down at the vision and the collage, I was like, this is a lie. This is not the life that I'm living. This is the life that other people want to believe that I'm living. But there is a lot of fracture happening inside this marriage that needs to be addressed, right? And so I went back to the drawing board and I started to think about, what do I want to see happen in this next 12 months of my life? And when I came back to it, this is what it actually ended up looking like. And you won't be able to see all of it, but I'm going to explain the key points, right? That gave me the clarity for me. So if you look here, right, there's this really important word that is right. You see this woman, right? And on this woman, there's this word right there above her heart. And it said courage, right? And I put that word there because I knew for whatever it was that I was going to decide, whether it was to decide to stay in my marriage or to leave my marriage, I was going to have courage, whatever that meant, right? And then I began to align what it was that I really wanted to see happen in my life. And so I wrote the vision statement for that, right? So that was a really key pivotal thing. And as I continue to work through my marriage, or, you know, try to work on this, that, and the other end, I am not exempt, because it takes two, right? I can easily point the finger at, he wasn't doing this and he wasn't doing that, which is true, but I also still am a partner in the marriage. And so there was no perfection on this side either. But what I knew was, in the beginning space of that, one of the things that you had initially asked was like, what was the hardest part you believe we faced when going through a separation or divorce? And for me, the hardest part was facing it. And it's facing it from multiple spaces. It's facing the people. And for me, the people were my church community and my family. And from the church community, because so often, what you're taught is you stay in your marriage, you stick it out, you tough it out. And then even culturally, right? There's this thing about being a ride or die chick, right? So you get all of that kind of pushed up on you, or either it's taught or inferred very heavily. You fight for your marriage. You hear that all the time.
Yeah.
And it was the facing the family and what they would feel and what they would think, facing the church, because I was very much in the church. I was working at a church. And so, and I was speaking and different things like that. So there was the pressure of that. So facing the people, it was also facing myself and being honest, again, like I said before, about what's the truth, Michelle, about what things are. And then the last thing that I had to face, was facing God in terms of not in the way that I felt like God had been presented to me, in that space of, you won't survive this. You fight for your marriage. It was more so that it was facing God from the space of allowing God's grace and love to wash over me, to say that, yeah, that is my ideal for a family, that families would stay together. But I also knew what I was saying to him was, I'm not going to survive this, both physically, emotionally, and spiritually, or not just both, but all three. I was not going to survive this marriage physically. I was not. I was stressed, and there was a whole lot of things going on that it was crazy. And spiritually, I knew it was killing me. And emotionally, I was just not in a good space. And so for me, what I had to determine, and again, this is not for everybody, but for me, what I had to determine, last thing I'll say about, in that space, is that I often, I'm going to say always, a strong word. I often appreciate the spiritual guidance that I get from a pulpit, respect it. And I've learned so much, and it's so valuable to me. The thing that I had to say to myself is, none of these people have to go home with me. Not one of them. Not one of them go home with me when it's all said and done. Not one of them are up with me at 1 a.m. when I'm going through what's happening in my home. Not one of them are even aware of what's happening. And so because of that, that's when I had to make a decision for myself to figure out, yep, this is going to impact my kids, but let me figure out what's going to be the best decision for me. And that's the pre-divorce, like making the decision. Right. And quite honestly, sometimes it gets worse when you make the decision before it gets better. So that was a whole long speech, but that's kind of context to where everything kind of started for me.
What would you tell our listeners tonight who are currently facing divorce, or have been through divorce, or having a hard time, like they're having a hard time recreating like the life for themselves? What would you tell our listeners this evening that are in that position? I would say, you said in terms of them once they are actually facing divorce and kind of in it? They might be in it right now facing divorce, or they are just out of it and they're having a really hard time like redefining their life and redefining who they are. Because I can't personally imagine being married to someone for so long, but I know in relationships in general, it's easy to start to find your identity in your partner. Yeah. So once that's taken away, you don't know who you are anymore. Listen, you have wrote the entire thesis on that question in and of itself, right? With just what you said, because that would be the advice in terms of what I had to learn. Part of, people say, we live in the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia area. And people say, just like probably other places too, that dating in this area is a dumpster fire. It can feel like a dumpster fire. But at the same time, what I can say that I've learned over this time period of dating, right? One of the things I think each dating experience I've had, most of them, right? And there's not been a lot, I can count them on a hand, right? That have been significant, is that one of those dating partners or dating relationships or experiences
One of the things that I learned that was really important that I would offer is that you got to explore again. Because to exactly what you said is that when you're married, a lot of your identity becomes that marriage and that person, right? You still have yourself, but a lot of your identity can be in that person and the marriage unit, right? And being a partner, being a spouse, being a parent, being, being what the two families need, all those things. So that's all of your identity. And so when that begins to disintegrate, now you got to figure out what this new island is, right? Yeah. And for me, I remember being asked, this guy, he asked me, it was a question it was a loaded question. And it was like, what do you like? And I remember not being able to fully answer the question. And we weren't talking about like, you like chicken or fish, but it was like a deep questioning and conversation about what do you like. And I remember I couldn't answer that question and it bothered me. And I went back home and I reflected for, some time, like, why can't I answer that question? And it was because I had done not excellent and definitely not perfect, but so much of my life had been about how to serve in my marriage, and not just my marriage, but also serve my community, serve my kids. But when I was faced with now, it's you, because when you're in marriage, and especially when you are going through the challenges of marriage, right? Like there was so much time, I think, from me spent on what he's doing wrong. God changed him, this, that, and the other. That was the bulk of my conversation. And so when that was no longer my opinion for me and my experience, it was like, God was like, all right, that's no longer here. Now let's deal with you. And I'm like, hey, let's deal with me. I'm good. No, you're not. You have some broken areas that I have allowed you to walk with that limp for a long time, and you have survived it, but we need to move into thrive, especially because you are asking me for a new vision in terms of relationships, right? So for me, I'm very clear. Like, I'm still a proponent and an advocate of healthy marriages, period. I have a desire, no lie. I have a desire to be in long-term partnership with a person, right? And in order for that to take place in the way that I desire it, the way that I have envisioned it, the way that I've written out this vision statement for it, that's matriculating in my heart, I feel like God is like, I'm not going to let you go into that space until we do some healing work in you that had nothing to do with your ex-husband. It had nothing to do with him. It had everything to do with your childhood. And so in that space, so for me as an example, and Michelle, I believe in high dive transparency as much as I can when I share my own story, not other people's. So even in the divorce, I try to be protective of my ex, because that's his story for him to share. It's not mine fully, right? So in the parts that I can share for me is that the pieces that I did not realize that were still very broken and fractured was my issue with abandonment. Abandonment related to my mom passing away when I was just about 5 years old. My dad not being able to take care of us because he was suffering with alcoholism after coming back from the war. And there was so much abandonment related to that it showed up in relationships and how I engage with my ex, and even now in dating spaces. And so I feel like God has been like, before we really get into the bringing your person, whoever your person, we're going to do some deep excavating work. And the way that I kind of present it is, I feel like literally not many, but enough days I am on an operating table, and I feel it's like I'm on this operating table and God is doing this work, and it hurts sometimes. And there's some surgeries that you can have that it's like a one and done. And there are other surgeries in the very physical part of life that it's a series of work. And I feel like for the last 3 years, me and God have been in this series of work that I see the growth, I see the healing, but I'm not done yet. And so that has been part of the process, is getting clear about, again, who is Michelle McKinney? Who is Michelle, the single woman, but not even just the single woman, who is Michelle McKinney now? and what are the desires of your heart? Not what do other people want from you, for you rather, but what do you really want for yourself? So that would be the thing that I would say, is that as you're trying to figure out who you are as you're going through the divorce or your post-divorce, is do some exploration in identifying, who am I now?
When you say exploration, what does that look like? Because, so there's two parts to this. As far as dating is concerned, do you suggest that you take time for you before trying to date? Did you wait at any point? Did you happen to just start dating right away? Like, I know that there's no right way to do it. Everybody's journey is different, right? But did you take time to yourself first, or do you suggest that people take time to do that exploration before they start dating?
So listen, I'm going to give it to you in the raw, in the way that Michelle McKinney did it. I'm sure there are books and therapists and all those people who would tell you a right way to do it. I'm going to honestly share my process and my experience. And, maybe in hindsight, some things I would have done differently, but I'm grateful for the experience of it. So to give context, we had been separated like at least a year, all during COVID, right? So we were living under the same roof, but we were living under the same roof, basically living under the same roof, right? And heading in that direction. Not heading, it was going to happen. Like the house is being sold, and after the house is sold, we're different places, right? So before I was officially divorced, that was a year. And then before that, we were separated for probably not like doing life as a married couple for a year, right? So 2 years, a woman in her early 40s at that time, I have desires and I have desires, right? So I'm not going to be here and pretend like, oh, girl, I just spend time with myself. I had a desire to spend time with myself. Was I with anybody? No. But I did start to explore dating, right? And, I'm going to share part of the disappointment that it was hard to face, but I understand it now. Part of it was that, so we were in the process of the divorce. The papers had been filed. We were separated, right? And I knew there was no going back. And I wanted to talk to people. I wanted male energy in my life, not like from a brother. I wanted like, hey, you're so pretty. I wanted like, I wanted the male, interaction. Now, at the time, we're in the midst of COVID, right? So nobody interacted with nobody. And so I remember getting on the dating apps, and I had this rude awakening one day that hurt me to my core, but later I understood it, right? So I wasn't upset with the person. I appreciated his truth. And so in dating apps, you typically share what your status is, right? Single, married, widowed, divorced, right? Or separated. And so I remember being honest, and I put separated on I think I put it on my profile, or somehow maybe it wasn't, whatever happened. So I had matched with this guy. Great guy, well, I say great, attractive, nice profile, all the things, right? So we were having the initial conversation, and I ended up saying, I think he asked me the question, and I was honest. I was like, I'm currently separated. He said, I can't date you. And I was just quiet. He was like, you are still married. I cannot date you right now. You have to finish your process before I can. And I'm going to tell you, that thing hurt me, and it made me gun shy of staying on the apps. After I had gone through my own divorce process, I understood it fully, because that is me now in the single space, that everybody chooses what's best for them. For me, one of the things I've learned is that I don't desire dating a person that is still separated. I have a high preference that you are fully emotionally and physically available to focus on me and what we think we want to explore with each other, right? So all that to say, I did, like, during that time frame, because I had been by myself, I started trying to date, because it didn't happen, trying to date prior to. And in the last, once the divorce was completed, that's when I jumped back into it, because after that, being gun shy, I jumped back into it. And that has been a challenging process, because dating, whether you have been divorced or never been married or whatever, dating can be so triggering. People trigger your traumas.
Yes.
the things if you're married, your person will trigger your traumas.
Mm-hmm.
And the beauty in this process, so remember I said, in terms of our conversation, pre-divorce,
Right.
go divorce, and after divorce, right?
Right.
And part of this process for me has been the two things that have been important and key for me are therapy and community.
Mm.
From the beginning of making the decision to get divorced, and go through that process, and then for during the process and after. Therapy has been important because of what I said before, is that now you have time to focus on the parts of you that are broken, that really, right? And when you are in proximity with somebody like that, whether it's your spouse, you're getting ready to marry, in a relationship, you're dating, whatever, they will trigger you. And so the things that I'm learning now in my therapy sessions and in community with my people is how to react different to different things, how to investigate where is this coming from, so that I don't project onto my dating partner or whomever in that, and really dealing with that would normally cause me to act a certain way. And when you are a person that has dealt with abandonment, a lot of times, not everybody, part of the way that you deal and you cope is that I'm going to leave you before you leave me. Now, that's not what I did in my marriage, but I am clear that when I get scared, and that's part of the therapy work, right? Is that because that abandonment stuff is still so fresh from a child, is that now it's sort of like, no, we got to deal with this. And so for me, therapy and community, being able to talk to my girls, my guys, whatever, that are very close to me, being able to have that space. And one of my girlfriends literally just joined right now, and I think about her and a few others, that I can still have the exact same conversation, that this is bothering me. And it's a safe space, and they kind of talk me through it. So those are the things I know for me that have been really important in being able to go through the process.
Now, you're a very intuitive woman. Not everybody has the ability to understand themselves on that level. Was it therapy that opened up your eyes to going back to your childhood? Was this something new for you, or did you know that you had that you struggled with the feelings of abandonment? Or was this something that was fresh and you were like, wow, that makes sense now, and you're connecting the dots? Did you figure this out on your own, or was it your therapist that helped you see it?
So I think there was a part of me that knew it, but I just didn't have the words to be able to explain it fully in the way that a therapist will give you the vocabulary to understand it, right? So when it was time, because I had gone to other therapists before, and it was like, I don't think this is fit, right? Sometimes, just like a good hairdresser, you got to go to multiple people before it's a good fit for you, right? And I had been to therapists before, and one of the things I learned, of course, is that there are different modalities of therapy. And I knew that I didn't know that it was abandonment. I didn't know that was the vocabulary for it, but I knew that there were some things that were unresolved in my childhood. That part I knew, right? And during my research, as I was I was on Psychology Today or what have you, and trying to look up therapists, I think somehow I came across something that just, about childhood trauma. And I learned about this one modality that I talk about a lot of times on my Instagram, it's called imago therapy. And imago therapy is a specific modality that really helps you to look at your childhood traumas, and they help you to understand how those childhood traumas show up in your adult life, right? And there's this one quote, I actually printed it out because I love this quote so much, because I knew I wanted to share it with you guys. Is this the guy who was the co-founder of Imago Therapy? His name is Harville Hendrix, right? He says, every marriage is a consequence of childhood. The unconscious mind wants to heal those wounds, but that can only be achieved if both participants in a relationship are aware of what those hurts were. This is my favorite part of this quote. We become partners with each other in the project of helping each other finish childhood, right? And that part, the entire quote, is so spot on. But that's part of the reason for me why I view marriage and partnerships differently, intimate partnerships differently than I did when I first got married. One, I was in my 20s. I was like 22, I think, when I got married.
Wow.
And even in growing through it, you know, marriage meant something different to me now than now having gone through therapy and understanding myself. And as older people say, keep on living, right? You keep on living, you understand some things. And part of what I just believe and now seeing, and part of even what I talk to about my therapist has helped me to understand, is that part about we become partners with each other in the project of helping each other finish childhood. The thing that I know that I have to have in partnership now that I understand it is I have to have a safe space to be able to show you my wound. So like right now, if I were to take like, you know, you can only see like this part of me, right? But when I'm not getting undressed, y'all, but when I do this, right, and I show you that mark that's back here, I'm showing you a vulnerable side of me that the scary thing for most of us as human beings is, if I show you that part, will you still love me and will you still stick around? Because part of this dating space and learning myself and inviting and allowing another person to be in this proximity of my space now, the way I view it is this a person that I feel safe enough, you know, at the right time? You don't do this on the first date. You don't do this. This is
right.
establish some space with, right? My therapist says this thing that she said this to me over a year and a half ago when we were doing work, right? And she said about a particular person, she was like, he's a safe place for you to do your work with. And just based on some things I had shared with her, right? And it's been interesting understanding that and the importance of having a person in partnership, in relationship, that is this a safe person for me to do my work? Yes, we want to have fun. We want to think about what do we want in our future. We want all of that. But now for me, I look at partnership and marriage as this space of, is this someone that I'm willing to do my work with and show them my work? And is this someone who's also willing to do the work with me? And that's important. And I know, you know, like that, I think that was one of the things that you were, you know, just thinking about, you wanted to talk about, is that space of, for people who are getting married and, you know, in that space, like, what do you think about? And that is one of the things that I think is important to think about. Like, is this a person that you are willing, whatever their traumas are, whenever they happen, whatever their traumas are you willing to give them a safe space to share those traumas with you and for you to be there to support them through them? And because as women, it's so much easier for us to say yes, because that's what we nurture. But then there's the flip side of it. Does he give you the space also? And is he invested in your growth too? That's the important part for me now about marriage and partnership and long-term dating, that I just didn't understand any of that before. Why I say I look at marriage and partnership, intimate partnership, very differently now.
And I want to encourage you all that is out there. I know it's hard to find or to be found by a man that creates that safe space. But I think that was one of the things, I know that was one of the things that that really solidified what I have with my fiance, because I was so used to men looking at me as broken. You know, they're just looking at me as broken, and men even telling me like that I'm broken, or, you know, almost like they couldn't be with me because I was like, we don't really know, you know. And I remember when I got with my fiance, and when we first started dating, it was hard because I had never seen a healthy relationship. I didn't know what that looked like. I was still healing in different ways. And I said, how do you not see me as broken? And I'll never forget. And he still says it to me today. He was like, I've never seen you as broken. I see you as the strongest woman ever. Like, he just always saw me as strong. So whenever I was having like a hard day or something, you know, he'd be like, sometimes I forget that you know, still are going through this process, because I see just strength whenever I look at you. And I was like, what? Like, you know, I was never used to that. And it's creating that safe space. Like, it's such a safe healthy, relationship. And that's so important because even, with him, like I need to make sure I'm creating a safe space for him as well.
100%. I love that. I love that. And the thing that's hard, I think anyway, for people who have been married or just dating too, right? Is that when it's time to let go, when you have decided, not time, when you have decided that I'm going to close this chapter with this person in the way that we've been doing life, right? Whether it is divorce or whether it is a breakup, in the case of a couple that's not married. I think the thing that sometimes, not for everybody, but sometimes you can contemplate, will I ever get an opportunity again?
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes can make some people stay longer than they should in situations. I think that also in that space, I think it's important to listen to your voice and what your inner voice is telling you, and learning to, like, that's been big therapy work for me, learning to trust my voice. And I remember in therapy, she asked me one day, she said, do you trust yourself? And without missing a beat, without hesitation, I said, no. This is our early days of working together, because I knew I didn't trust my voice. I did not trust because of things that had happened in childhood. Like I said, a lot of that stuff had nothing to do with my ex-husband. A lot of it had to do with childhood stuff that I had not gone through any kind of healing, nor had the tools to even know that I needed some healing work done. And I think for me, that's when we talk about thriving after divorce, that's part of me that feels like I'm thriving, right? It is being able to create a new vision for myself, and getting greater clarity in the exploration space of who is Michelle, what does she like, what turns her on. And part of that exploration place is sometimes, I hope this is okay to say, if not, you'd be like, Michelle, you can side eye me, okay? I think for women, I know for me, part of that exploration space, it is, yes, exploring, do you like pottery, and do you like, do you like to write poetry? You like going to concerts? That's important. I also think, especially for women of faith, I think there's an importance of figuring out for you, whatever that means for you, figuring out, exploring, what do you even like sexually? I think for women, there is not enough conversations that is not written also with shame to understand that you need to know for yourself, and be able to communicate to your partner, whoever your partner is, your spouse, whoever your partner is, what you like. And there's just not enough conversation. So when I say explore, I'm talking about everything. You explore everything about what you like, so that you can live the life that you desire. And so when I say, what is it that you really want? What are your heart's desires? Like, what are they? We get this one shot, in my opinion anyway. Some people believe we have more than one shot. For me, I believe we get this one shot of life. And I want to live this life fully lived with no regrets. And was the decision to go through a divorce, to break somebody's heart, was that hard? Yes, it was difficult. But I knew that I could not stay in the way that I was. It was not only not healthy for me, it wasn't healthy for him, and it wasn't healthy for my children. And so I knew that, or I sensed that I was going to have to do something that was going to disrupt and disappoint a lot of people. But what I did know for sure about myself, and I posted this quote, I forgot what the quote said, but it was something about, it can all leave me, or whatever it is, but it's not on me, it's in me. I can rebuild again. It's not on me, it's in me, right? The thing that I have learned, I think that has been beneficial, I think, through trauma, there are things that come of good for you, right? There are survival skills that you learn in trauma,
right?
That trauma just teaches you. You learn how to survive whatever your trauma experience is. You learn some survival things, right? but then you also incur the damaging parts of the trauma. And part of the survival thing that I learned in having dealt with abandonment as a child is I'm not afraid to start over. I will start from ground zero, from nothing. I will start from nothing because I've seen my life being able to rebuild again. That thing of it's not on me, it's in me. I know God's favor. I know God loves me. I know God favors. I know that God takes care of me because I've seen the receipts. And so to be able to see, so my girlfriend, Chris, who was in here that I was talking about earlier, this house that I'm in, this was a dream. Like I wanted to be specifically in this community, even while I was married, but I had discounted it so much because my credit was terrible. And during the time of the separation, I literally was homeless, like not even playing. I was homeless in that I go live with a girlfriend because I had the business Dreams Unleashed. I had left my corporate job to start to really focus 100% on the business. And so I had that going on. I had to get the house ready to be sold on the market and potentially take a loss for the house. So I didn't to be clear, I didn't walk away from the divorce like we had money from selling a house. I was trying to even, so I didn't owe a bank. That's where I was. So there was no full job beyond the business, but I couldn't focus on that because I was trying to survive the divorce and figure out what was going on with my family. Didn't have a place to live. Asked a girlfriend and who had said to me, just tell me what you need. And that was part of the learning lesson. I said, there's that process that you go through in that where you spend so much time focusing on your partner at the time and what they're not doing right, that then God's like, okay, now we get to work on you because they're not even the picture anymore. Now we're going to work on you, right? So you don't even have that to talk about. And the thing that I did not do well is ask for or receive help. That was something that during that process of the separation, moving out of the house, having to live with a girlfriend with my daughter, who was maybe 7 or 8 or whatever at the time. My 2 sons were going away to college. I had no place for them to come home to during the holiday. And being from that space to, okay, Michelle, let's get it together. Let's get the vision together. And I remember talking to my girlfriends and my brother. It was one of my girlfriends specifically and my brother. It was it was October at the time. And I was like, I think it was October. Do you think it's crazy for me to be able to be in my new home by Christmas? And they're the 2 people that I always talk about my money. And again, remember, credit jacked up. And no savings. There was nothing saved because like I said, I had transitioned and was living with my girlfriend and did not have a job yet and literally had just started a job in September. She shared about a job where she was working and mentioned to the executive that, hey, I know somebody that should apply for this job. Favor through God, got that job, started in September, and then had the vision for, is it crazy for me to be in a home by Christmas, specifically by Christmas? Lo and behold, I remember telling Kristen and another friend of mine, I really would love to live in this particular community that I had always envisioned, right? But I had disqualified myself, like I said, from it because of all the things. And all of that space, I was at a speaking engagement. I think it was in August when all of the crazy stuff was happening. I never knew that the woman who actually owns this house I'm renting, who owned this house, she was actually in that audience. We've never spoken.
No way.
And a friend of mine happened to tell me, who I had told, this is the vision. I desire to live in this house, right? So I started to ask her, I was like, can you go with me to open houses? I just want to go to open houses. I've never been over that community. I just know I really want to live there, right? It's just a dream for me. And so she did. So being able to have people that see vision with you, even when you're not even tangibly.
Yeah.
She went with me to the first open house and then we went to a second one, right? And I remember going to that second open house and being like, this is where I want to be. Out the blue, she calls me one day at work and she was like, I don't talk to my coworkers a whole lot. One of my coworkers said to me that they're trying to find, I'm paraphrasing all this, they're trying to find a renter for this community. And guess what community it is? And she says it. And she says, and she was just like, they were like, I wonder if we'll find somebody to move in by Christmas. What did I say I wanted, right? Wow. We came, so I saw it and I was like, oh my gosh, We came, we saw the place, my daughter and I, with the realtor, with the broker, and walked through the house. And I was like, this is the dream. My daughter, this actual room, she said, Mom, take a picture of me in this room. So I was like, okay. I took a picture of her in the room. I came back home, and by this time, this was that same, was this the same? No, this is that same vision playbook where, remember I said I had the other vision. I had to clarify the vision for my marriage, right? I had another blank page at the back of the book. So I came, I'm gonna show it from afar because it shows my house. So I came and I put the vision back on here, right? And it had a picture of my daughter in this room, right? And I wrote the vision statement. And the vision statement, the role was called Keeper of the Home. I said, by Christmas 2019, we are settled into the unit and I named the community. And this is before I had even applied for the space. And I have cultivated a home that looks and feels like our refuge, safe place where we can thrive. Your word, who would have known? Never thought about that. Where we can thrive and invite others over to experience community, right?
Love that.
Terrified, but I was like, the vision is clear. I'm writing the vision out. Lo and behold, I write a letter to explain my situation. And some way, somehow, God moved on the hearts of the homeowners. And I got a call one day at work and was just like, Ms. McKinney, you have been selected for the home out of all the people. And I was literally at work in our cafeteria, boohooing, crying, because it was one of the first steps of seeing the vision and what Thrive was going to look like and feel like. This specific room, the last piece I'll tell you, the way God does exceedingly abundantly beyond all you could ask or think. When I moved into the house, I had no furniture because we had gotten rid of everything. There was only like 2 pieces that I kept. We had no beds, but I didn't care because I was like, I have a home for my kids now, right? Somebody gifted me, which is a whole different story, with their spouse was like, hey, what happened to the air mattresses, da-da-da. And the person was like, I gave them to Michelle because they've been sleeping on the floor. And the person was like, what? Listen, let's give them this. Went to their house, got this incredible, beautiful financial gift that was like, go buy the mattress and the bedding and stuff that you need for you. Get off the floor, right? Continue to build my way up. Had started the job, got another part-time job at that time. And this particular room, there was no vision for it because I didn't have the money to do it. It was just like, this is just going to have to be an empty room. The same room where my daughter was like, take a picture of me in this room. Lo and behold, during COVID, a friend of mine reached out to me. She had gotten she's an incredible partner with Home Depot and had earned and pitched for this incredible deal with Home Depot. And she pitched to them multiple spaces. And one of the spaces she pitched was this room. And she pitched the story, so to speak, however she shared the story. And she told them, I hope I can say this, she told them, if you don't select it, I'm just going to keep representing this room to you. And they selected. Home Depot literally furnished this entire room. Every bit of furniture, these bookcases, the elements that's inside of it, all the things furnished by Home Depot. I would have never guessed in my wildest dreams when I was watching Trading Spaces and all the shows on the HGTV, I would have never guessed it was my story. But
I'm crying over here.
Is that thing of
story.
God will do exceedingly abundantly above all you could ask or think. Just because it looks like you are in the tunnel and it feels like there's no way out. What I know for me and my life is no matter how bad it has gotten, I had to silence the critics, silence the noise of what other people wanted for my life, and ask God, would he be with me? And God has been with me every step of the way. And that has been the blessing. And in that space, when he is a blessing to you, what I know is that by me sharing my story, it helps others to see she ain't no different from me. It's possible for me.
Right. I think what I keep hearing when you're talking is community and networking and faith and just believing that that your life is not over. You continue to move forward. And I think that that's important for our listeners. If you are in that place where you might feel like you're in the tunnel and you don't know what's ahead and things are crumbling down, community, you know, have community, whether it's through church or networking. You have to put yourself out there, community, and then therapy. But for the ones that can't afford therapy or can't go for some reason, you can always get my book. My book will literally walk you through step by step of going from surviving to thriving, or find a mentor. Reach out to somebody that you really admire. Reach out to Michelle, you know, and Michelle has her playbook for sales, so you can go and get that, and that can help you as well with redefining what your vision is and redefining where you want to go from here on out. So community, faith, not being afraid to take those steps forward into that new direction that is there for you. Not being afraid to step through that new door.
I
That
like
sound right, Michelle?
No.
You agree with that?
And you know, what I would add that you said, I just want to highlight it, is I love that word that you use, thrive, because so many of us forget about just divorce, period. 7.6 billion people in the world. So many of us are just choosing to survive life and let it happen to us. And I know there's things that are overwhelming to you. And again, so I'm not talking about whether it's your finances, whether it is you getting into the shape that you desire, your career, whatever it is. Stop choosing to just survive your life and just letting the days go by. What would it look like? What would it feel like if you chose to thrive? And the thing about thriving is that it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be, Michelle can tell you, thriving requires so much growth. And we talk about, for kids, that thing about growing pains, because sometimes it hurts because your bones are outgrowing the capacity it feels like it has. And even now for me, you know, in the other side of things, there's so many growing pains, but in the growing pains, there's still so much beauty. Like the space that my ex and I are in terms of co-parenting our kids. Like, I told a friend of mine this week, like, I can really say that man is my friend. I can always say that.
Wow.
But we had to go through a process of uncoupling, and no longer, because it's the scripture that says, how do you unone one? Like, how do you do that? That's like separating the sand. You can't. It's very difficult, right? And so for us to have to uncouple emotionally and everything that we had to go through, that's difficult for both parties. And you have to, it's sometimes processing wise. And this is where I think you have to have grace if you are the person, especially that made the decision. You've had time to process it. You have had time to think about it. By the time you tell it to them, it's a shock. They are, even if they saw it coming, even if you had said it to them before, the fact that your threats before, or your talk about it before, you just continue your life, but this time you're moving forward, you have to also, as a human being, give them grace to be able to understand now they're going through trauma. Yeah. So part of the post of it was trying to learn how to have grace in that space so that he and I could co-parent. And him learning, like, who is this Michelle person now, right? That's living a whole life and out here dating and all. That's difficult. And so I'm so appreciative for God working in me and God working in him, in a healthy way, co-parent our children together. That is such a blessing. And that's a space where I wouldn't say we are surviving co-parenting. I ain't gonna say we fully thriving, but we are in that path of thriving that our kids know that is a healthy space between me and him. You're not gonna hear me talking badly about him to them. You're not gonna get that. And they know they're not gonna get it. So that, is another side of the thriving, when it is that you have children that are involved whenever possible.
Thank you so much for sharing with us this evening, Michelle. And guys, please go follow her, Michelle.McKinney. You should see it up here anyway. Go follow her, go support her. Please go check out her vision playbook. That just sounds amazing. That sounds awesome that you created that. And reach out to her. I mean, she's a coach. I did my free little session with you, and oh my gosh, I left that call just feeling so inspired. I mean, just from that one session, Michelle, I'll never forget like all the notes I wrote down and how great that was, because that really did help me with knowing what to do next in my life. So I appreciate you. I appreciate all that you do. Thank you for so bravely sharing your story with us this evening and dropping all of those gems of wisdom. I really, really appreciate you. And thank you guys for joining. I will be reposting this whole interview on my YouTube. The link is in my bio. You guys can go watch the other Thriving After interviews as well. And is there anything else you want to end the conversation with tonight, Michelle?
No, I think you said it all.
A lot was said, and I think we hit every topic.
Nope, just thriving. I love it.
Yes. Well, you have a great evening, Michelle. Thank you so much for doing this. It was definitely a blessing.
My pleasure. Thanks. Love you, Michelle.
Love you too. Bye, everyone.
Bye.